Hello! This is Lugbzurg, the man in the moon, here with two guests, Daniel P. Riley and Nick the Phoenix Press. Welcome to the Lunar Bridge. Only my second broadcast. Don't mind the slight amateurism here. So, the thing I wanted to talk about here, as a kind of to reflect the first broadcast I did, wanted to talk about heirlooms of storytelling, preserving the stories that we've loved before and bringing them to those in the future, whether it's your Batmans, your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or something more obscure. And I figured what really kicked this off probably more than just, oh, why don't I just do the opposite of what I did in the first stream? I want to gauge what you guys think of this wacky moment here. So a few months back, I was minding my own business and I saw something truly bizarre. There was an announcement of a live-action film adaptation of something that just left me wondering, how the heck are they supposed to make a live-action film based on that? And I just couldn't get out of my head, so I just sat down, and for the next several minutes, I just wrote up a rough treatment of how I think something like this could possibly look, at least in live action. If it were animated, I would do something much more within its actual mythology that a lot of people maybe don't even know exists. But if it has to be live action, okay, maybe something similar to the Sonic movie or something. So probably less than an hour, I wrote this up just for the fun of it, out of my sheer mind-boggled reaction to that this could possibly exist. And let's have a little game here. Let's see how long, or who can figure out what classic 80s IP this is supposed to be. So here's what I wrote.
Get your brothers ready, gentlemen.
All right, yeah. Let's read this page here, and let's see if either of you can figure it out.
I'm intrigued.
You have my attention.
So try and guess what this is that apparently has a live action film adaptation in development. And this is what I made up on the spot what that might look like. In the near future, the first ever manned expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy is about to launch. 4 astronauts board a ship that blasts off into space, equipped with technology that will allow the ship to warp across the galaxy and beyond after it leaves Earth's atmosphere, as it cannot work while surrounded by air. Within minutes, the ship lands on an alien planet resembling Saturn, though not a gas planet, with what looks like a giant bite taken out of it. The astronauts find themselves in a strange area with block-shaped structures that appears to be inhabited, though it is late at night. They loot the area of anything they can get their hands on. Mystical artifacts, giant fruits, and hundreds, if not thousands, of mysterious, levitating, non-perishable alien pellets. Suddenly, they are caught. Nope. I said 80s.
Oh.
Suddenly,
okay.
they
threw me off when he said block, so.
Okay, so suddenly they are caught by a mysterious yellow alien. He was guarding the area in suspicion, and the astronauts manage to capture him, trapping him in a cage, and lock him in the ship. They get greedy with loading the ship with as many alien specimens as they can get to leave themselves set for life and depart back for Earth. However, the alien breaks out of his confinement and runs around the ship. The 4 astronauts give chase and try to nab him again. Utter chaos ensues while the ship goes into re-entry, as it was well above its recommended weight capacity, careening out of control. And entire crates of objects and the alien fruits are dropped from the ship and smash into parts unknown. However, the alien manages to nab the main artifact that the astronauts stole, which has protected his village for generations, and uses it to defend himself just in time as the astronauts realize no one is piloting the ship anymore, and it crash lands back on Earth. The
This
astronauts
has to be a
die.
video game adaptation. It has to be a video game adaptation.
Yeah,
This is a video game plot.
The astronauts
This is a
die
video game
on
plot.
impact and turn into ghosts.
This is Pac-Man, isn't it?
Yes! There's a live-action Pac-Man movie for some reason.
To be fair, if you're a Kamen Rider fan, there is a movie where Kamen Riders fight Pac-Man. I am not kidding. They're literally it's during the X-Aid Kamen Rider series, which is video game based to begin with. They fight Dr. Pac-Man. I am not kidding. Kamen Riders fight Pac-Man. And this is live action, by the way. This is live action.
Wasn't there an Adam Sandler movie recently that did like
Pixels.
Yeah, that. I just vaguely remember the giant Pac-Man.
Yeah, I mean that movie was a bit cringy, but it wasn't as bad as people like make it out to be.
It just literally wasn't memorable enough.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my brain around that. How would one make that into a live adaptation?
So, Lug, I'm going to send you a video in private, Jazz, of the full preview of Pac-Man versus Kamen Rider.
Oh boy!
Nice.
All right. Should I get out of the last few sentences?
Go for it.
Blaming Pac-Man for their deaths and feeling the world owes them after they just died for traveling beyond the galaxy, they go on a villainous rampage with their newfound ghastly powers in a crusade to kill Pac-Man for revenge. Pac-Man soon runs into an employee of the spaceport where the launch took place, who has a background in paranormal investigation, and the two go on an adventure to stop the ghosts and return Pac-Man to his home planet. When the employee scans Pac-Man to pick up some kind of alien signature from him, they discover traces that narrow down the location of his planet to a roughly 75% area of the Andromeda Galaxy. However, when Pac-Man reaches for some pellets and eats them, they notice the search area narrows down to less than 10% or less than 1% smaller size, knocking off a couple solar systems from the search. They realize that if they can track down more objects from Pac-Man's home planet, all the stuff that fell out of the ship before it crashed, they can narrow down its exact location, the exact location of his planet, and just warp him back home. They'll need to find where all the crates of pellets touch down from, and if Pac-Man eats all the pellets, there will be enough material from his planet to get an accurate reading to lock on to the exact location of his home planet. However, they're hunted by the four ghosts the whole way through. By the end of the film, the last crate of pellets has been found ahead of them and taken back to the spaceport. So it all goes full circle. Pac-Man will need to dodge ghosts and elite government agents to eat all the pellets within the cyberpunk labyrinth of the spaceport in order to return to his home planet. Pac-Man learns to no longer be complacent by letting the artifact do all the saving for him after it's taken by the ghosts and the government, and learns to take agency in his life.
And then the post-credit scene is another you see another Pac person but has a bow on their head. And the sequel is going to be Ms. Pac-Man.
That might be nice, but apparently they no longer have the rights to her, so plausible, but that would be an entirely different process.
I thought the way it worked was because for those who don't know, Miss Pac-Man was technically developed by a different team. It was originally
Midway,
an arcade add-on.
Was it Midway?
Actually, I think it was different people entirely. But Midway owns But I guess like the Miss Pac-Man team, I guess they like anytime they release an arcade version of Miss Pac-Man, they have to give some money they owe some royalties to these people, but like the rights to Miss Pac-Man are still within Namco.
Okay, yeah, I know this really reared its ugly head when Pac-Man World Repack came, and they just completely replaced Ms. Pac-Man with, what was it, Pac-Mom or something?
Yeah. They definitely tried to like create a replacement character, but like just people weren't interested. Oh, do you want to see? You mind if I present my screen?
Oh boy. Let's see. Does it work like this? Does it work like this? There it is.
No.
No, it's no. You full screen. I'm sharing my screen. You should be down there. You'll see the people.
Oh, there it is. Let's see what this is. Dig Dug?
That's Pac-Man.
Is this Poyo Poyo or something? Wait, this is no. Oh, there. That's why his nose isn't. Why is Pac-Man always evil in live action?
So yeah, that was it. So that was a crossover movie between X8 and Kamen X8 and Kamen Ghost. They do like crossover movies every year with like the current season, the previous season. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that was a thing.
But yeah, I guess. Yeah. So he has been in live action more than just pixels. But yeah, I guess like once I saw that one was coming out, I'm not sure if it's even gone to filming yet, but I have been kind of the guy who looks into lore of things that people often assume don't really have any lore, little to no lore.
I am just
might know me for
surprised
Doom.
we got a Rampage movie. I am so shocked. We got a, Well,
Like, yeah.
I think from what I understand, the reason they did Rampage is because Universal, because like the Godzilla movies were pretty popular at the time. They wanted to do something similar. They realized they had the rights to Rampage, like they had that in their catalog, so they just decided to do a Rampage movie. It was basically to capitalize on the. The logic makes sense once you kind of spell it out.
Sure.
Oh yeah, because like I know Doom lore, I know Banjo-Kazooie lore, Duke Nukem lore, and it was at that point I decided, you know what? I wonder if there's Pac-Man lore. So I started looking into like the Pac-Man wiki, and oh man, what? Pac-Man has an absolutely crazy mythology.
Okay, question for you guys. If
Blinky has a daughter.
Okay. If they were to do a Duke Nukem live action movie today and just play it straight as like a action satire where they're not going to like emasculate Duke, but he's going to be like this character of like the 80s 90s action movie stars, who would you get to play Duke Nukem in today's live action?
Henry Cavill.
He's too good for it, but If this was like the '90s, or like this was the '90s, I so would have, or even I would have casted Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, because it's funny you mentioned that because I've brought that up a few times. I even talked to Scott Miller about it, and he said that would absolutely be that Henry would be his first choice too. I even
I
wrote
mean,
a rough.
it's kind of a free space, in like casting bingo. It's like Henry Cavill. It's like free parking. It's like, yeah, he's in everything. We literally, any nerd property, he's like our first casting for everything.
Yep.
Yeah, because like it's funny
Unless
you mentioned that.
Dredd, and then in that case, Carl Urban.
Because yeah, like
You can see
I
Carl
even
Urban.
I even have
He did play Judge Dredd.
I even have a rough treatment of a Duke Nukem film on my hard drive, although it does need some updating. I have some thoughts to make it much better if such an opportunity to do something like that arrives.
The thing is, we're on the verge of video game movie gold rush. We really are. They're finally starting to crack the code. Comic book movies are I mean, comic book movies will never admit this, but like they are starting to peter out. That it is starting to trend downwards. And video game movies are just doing really good. Like the Sonic movies really paves the way. Castlevania, we're starting to get some really good. They're starting to really kind of the way that I always say it's like they got it with comic movies. They had to crack the formula for the success, and they did that with X-Men. Blade kind of opened the door, but it was X-Men that really kind of set the precedent. Blade walked so X-Men could run. That's how I put it. And the formula for comic movies was basically take what is in the comics and then filter it through a modern world, be accurate, but like how these exist in real life, but still be faithful to the comic. Because that's kind of the formula that all comic movies since then have done to very well success. And then I feel like the formula for video game movies are take the essence of the game, craft a original story that is faithful to the games, or if the game has a good enough story, just adapt the story. But in Sonic's case, they kind of just created an original story that felt faithful,
Yeah, and we all have The Last of Us starring Jennifer Lawrence to thank for cracking the code.
That is a meme that is never gonna die. Like I'm still trying to wrap my head around why the frick did he even think like I can just imagine Sigourney Weaver looking at that being like, am I a joke to you? And she wasn't even the first female action star, but still.
Yeah, this whole first
like Mila Jovovich was like sorry.
Like, yeah, this whole first desperation is getting more desperate.
Oh yeah,
it always was.
Disney is on its 32nd first gay character. And now Power Rangers is getting into that first game thing as well. It's like, oh, we have the first female Red Ranger that's leading a team. They got to use all those qualifiers. It's like, she's the third female Red Ranger. Because A Squad Red, Lauren, Sheba, then her. And then as far as leading the team, Jen pretty much led Time Force, and they had Taylor with Wild Force, so she's the third of that one too. So it's like they got to use all these qualifiers to just like, oh, we got to get our win in. Like what's next? The first freckled person born on a Sunday at half past the hour, half moon rising. Now I'm just gonna go into song lyrics. Let's go.
Well, eventually you run out of firsts. What can you do about it?
Oh, trust me, they'll just like nature, they'll find a way. I think we lost Lug.
Uh-oh.
It's like, we lost him. Clear.
Distracted.
Shocking, isn't it?
But yeah, I guess like have there been adaptations you've held on to, you've wanted made, or others you've seen
video game wise,
recently,
or just in general?
Well, I guess we can kick off with video games.
Yeah, let's just kind of good to kind of limit it. I mean, Castlevania was one, and we got a pretty good one. They were getting like the Symphony of the Night one. For me, it's probably Metroid. I think Metroid would work really well as a movie. Like, I think like the story of the games are so good that like you can easily make a really good movie out of it. Just like honestly, this is one of those ones where it's like I actually wouldn't mind Paul Wes Anderson touching it and casting Milo, because Milo Jokovic actually would make a really good Samus Aran, and I feel like as long as they keep him like faithful to like the core story, it'd actually be a pretty decent movie. Because remember, he did do Mortal Kombat.
Which one?
The first one, which is, to be fair, the first Mortal Kombat is basically Enter the Dragon, but with Mortal Kombat, you know.
There's only so much you can do with certain genres.
Yeah, I actually liked the new version they did. I mean, some aspects of it were a little like the whole Cole thing. I just like, there's so many characters. Why did you have to invent one? Like, seriously.
It was meant to be a player allegory.
Isn't that what Johnny Cage is for?
No.
I mean, there's so
That's
many
what
other
Johnny Cage was for, not for anymore. Johnny Cage has taken on his own thing, but Cole was meant to be an ability for the watcher to insert themselves into the story without having to take on the role of an established character.
See, here's the problem. These blank slate characters, they may work in a literary sense. Like, that's why Twilight was so popular, because Bella was, like, described so little that people could put themselves in the role. They work brilliantly in a literary sense. And maybe in video games they can kind of work. But in a movie, they do not work at all. These, like, these blank characters that you're made to insert you to, they don't work at all. They don't work. They have never worked.
Yeah, that sort of thing has just never worked for me. I've never been able to just insert myself into a character. I just kind of, I don't have them become me. I just kind of become them when I'm playing. I don't try to role play as myself.
I mean, I do kind of sometimes role play myself because, like, I know a lot of times when I have like choice-based video games, like for example, in the Witcher community, there's kind of like this discussion of like, what are the choices Geralt would make in these kind of things, and like, I think, okay, that's cool, but like, I'm making choices that I think I would make. Like, for example, canonically, Geralt would romance Yennefer, but I'm sorry, but redhead with fireballs. I'm sorry, I gotta go with my heart.
Yeah, because like when I'd play Prototype, I'd go on constant rampages. But when playing Prototype 2 with an entirely different, more sympathetic protagonist, I tried to mitigate damage as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But with open world video games, which are really the bread and butter of the industry currently, the whole point is for you to insert yourself into the role. Even with something as limited as, say, Spider-Man, you technically could and were somewhat encouraged to make your own decisions in the costume of the character. And that was what Cole was meant to represent in the new Mortal Kombat, was that you could not have to worry about knowing Mortal Kombat and still engage with a, as you said, blank slate character and get into it from there.
I understand the logic. I just don't feel like they did it very well. And I feel like that approach doesn't really work in movies, and we can argue about that point. But
I'm not going to argue with it. But the point of blank slate is that it doesn't make sense. It's not meant to make sense because you're supposed to fill in the gaps yourself.
Right.
What they did with Cole was they gave him this heroic backstory and sort of destiny situation that was counter to the original concept. He should have
literally. Scorpion has a son in the games. Canonically, he has a son. Why don't you just use that character where it's literally like that character, but maybe not his son, but his descendant?
Yeah.
And he becomes Scorpion. Like, he gets the Scorpion powers, and he's the heir to Hisashi.
Yeah.
He's already his descendant. Anyway. Why not just make him his, give him the name of that son so you have that connection to the games. So he's technically a game character. They just kind of tweaked it a little bit. Instead, they gave him like these really lame powers where it's like he gets an armor upgrade, he gets weapons, and it's like the actor himself was fine. Like, honestly, you didn't even have to recast the character. Just like change his name, change his story a little bit, and give him scorpion powers. Like, it's just, I don't know, because like the whole, the Mortal Kombat is predicated on fire and ice. The eternal battle between fire and ice. And like, and the thing is, doing like this is kind of where I'm going to do my fan fiction, because that Bihan eventually becomes Noob Saibot, and then you get the other character who's like the good Sub-Zero. What if you had basically a descendant of Bihan's, in like a sequel, where like maybe he becomes good, and you have a rivalry between these two characters that have inherited these powers. And I'm sorry, I'm a better screener than these people, so it's like easy.
Yeah, they were aiming for general audience, and in doing so, they did fairly well with the project. So I don't have a problem with that.
I like the movie. I actually like the movie. Like, this is just a bit of a nitpick. Honestly.
Yeah, the hardcore fans will nitpick, but they always do, and that's the thing about an adaptation of any sort of property. An adaptation is never going to be a replica of the original in a different medium. It has to be literally adapted, hence the word.
Yeah, that's kind of what I
see. The thing is, when you adapt, you've got to be very careful to where if you stray too far, like what happened with Wheel of Time, where it's like hardly like the original at all, they completely destroy it. Witcher, adaptations are one thing. I think, like we just had our Mortal Kombat talk. Yeah, we had this big discussion about it, but ultimately we both agree we like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We both agree it's highly enjoyable and it's a good movie, and I want to see the next one going forward. So ultimately, the film did its job.
Right. That was the point I was
aside, it still felt like a Mortal Kombat movie. It still had the spirit. It's it's like, did it have some problems? Yes. I'd say it's like an 8 out of 10 movie, but it was good,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was doing with that whole Pac-Man rough treatment that I wrote in probably under an hour. If it were, I knew I had to stick with the restriction. It said live action. There's a live action. Yeah, I see we got some new viewers. So yeah, there was a live action Pac-Man movie introduced or announced a few months ago, and I just thought that just seems such a bizarre idea, considering there's not any humans in Pac-Man anyway. So I just wrote up a rough treatment.
Not the first one anyway.
Yeah, right. I wrote up a rough treatment of a kind of Sonic movie-esque plot in like under an hour, and I read out the description at the beginning of the stream. So yeah, I guess that kind of general audience thing is kind of what I was trying to do, seeing as I had to stick with it says live action. So if it were animated, however, I would go way more nuts with the actual Pac-Man lore, which is a thing that exists. There's decades of Pac-Man mythology, and it's really bizarre. I have had a fascination with lore in video games where people just kind of dismiss it, like Doom, Duke Nukem.
I got one question for you. There's only one question for this Pac-Man adaptation. Where are they putting in the song?
Uh-oh.
I got a Pac-Man fever. I mean, they're probably going to put it at the end credits, but still.
End credits or some kind of montage, maybe, where he's eating. I don't know.
That song's kind of.
But I managed to figure out how to get the idea. How to like. It sounds ridiculous. Like, how are you going to have Pac-Man running around mazes, eating dots, and being chased by ghosts, and have that actually progress the plot? Oh, here's how you do it. Like, I managed to do that. Like, it seems kind of ridiculous, but it's like, yeah, this is how you make that work. There's your action.
Now I want to see a fan edit to like the Maze Runner movies where like they're in the maze and all of a sudden a giant Pac-Man appears. Like, oh my god, if I had skills, I would so do that. Waka 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 waka. It's just like I'm sorry, nothing. Okay, you think that's ridiculous? Like this is kind of left field, but like nothing will ever be more ridiculous than the Thomas the Tank Engine mod for Skyrim. It replaces Alduin with Thomas the Tank Engine. Like, you know how in the beginning where you hear
dragon,
the roars?
right?
Yeah. Yeah. You hear the roars. You hear toot toot. You hear that in the background. Like, what was that? And it's just like it just lands on it. He starts wrecking crap, and then like in the beginning where like Alduin bursts the door, you see Thomas the Tank Engine in his face. It's just like, there's one that's even better where it's the Randy Savage mod where it turns the dragon into Randy Savage and he's like, oh yeah! And then shouts like, slap into a Slim Jim. It's like, I love Skyrim.
I was gonna say that only works if you do the Thomas the Tank Engine theme song instead of the background music.
Oh dear God, that will haunt my nightmares now. That is nightmare fuel.
You know what's something I would love to adapt to cinema? Beautiful Joe.
And should I go, baby?
You know what could make it especially fun is if do it like Phantom Tollbooth. Have it start in live action. Joe and Sylvia are live action. Go to a cinema. But once they get pulled, but they're watching an animated film and they get pulled in, and then they're cartoons, probably in 2D animation.
That would be cool. I mean, there was that live action series, but yeah.
If they followed the animation parameters of Beautiful Joe, yeah, that would be pretty cool.
I mean, there was an anime adaptation, and it was surprisingly fantastic. It even stuck with the same art style, used the same title logo. Really
that
love
sort
the
of
transformation music.
Yep, that sort of thing is important. And, you know, everybody brings up the Lord of the Rings movies as far as adaptations are concerned. Being a Tolkien fan for most of my life, I have huge nitpicks with the Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit films. But on the whole, they visualized what
they did the best they could.
Yeah, they visualized what was established in those books in such a way that it made for a compelling story, and it excised background information that wasn't really necessary, but what readers love in order to create a film that was enjoyable. And I think that's
like, and a lot of the changes they made, they had good reason to. Like, for example, your elimination of Glorfindel and giving Arwen's Glorfindel's role to Arwen, it actually makes more sense from a movie standpoint, where you introduce a character and then they disappear. Whereas Arwen is a character that's supposed to be appearing more. It just makes more sense to give Arwen's role to Glorfindel, and that's just, you know, it just makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's like, or Tom Bombadil, like, you know, like sure the
Tom Bombadil argument.
It's like, do they really need to be like? It's actually a huge diversion. It would really stall the movie. Oh, we got a Douglas in the chat.
John.
Hail, gentlemen! I have to dub his voice. I have no idea what his voice sounds like.
He's actually a really good orator, honestly. I've watched a lot of his videos. He's really good. I'm assuming he just got done with his own live stream.
Oh, yeah, hi, see him a lot on Twitter, but so apparently he does have a channel. I better check that out then.
Yes, you should sub to him. In fact, everyone should sub to John.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like with I found it really interesting how Beautiful Joe was adapted, because like in some senses it's so on brand more than most adaptations would be. Like they even used the same title logo, for crying out loud. They didn't try to like do some kind of simplified solid white logo or anything. Like no, they used the same title logo. But like there's a completely different soundtrack. they added a sidekick to Joe who actually ended up being not obnoxious. Both of them are somehow these like these figure, like both him and Captain Blue Jr. are both inspired by Captain Blue and kind of take that in different directions. But one other thing that it followed the same basic plot that, like, yeah, Joe gets pulled into the TV or the movie screen, gets stuck in the media dimension, becomes a superhero, and goes to rescue Sylvia. But one other thing that I found really interesting, and this was something that I'd say was big influence on the Doom adaptation I've been writing for a few years now. That I would love to get off the ground. I have a Doom TV show script. One of the things I found really interesting about how Beautiful Joe was adapted to anime was how they took all the okay, not all of them, but like most of them, the one-off boss battles, just these random monster bosses that kind of show up out of nowhere in the game, and then after you defeat them, they are never seen or heard from again. In the anime, they are reoccurring characters. And I thought that was really interesting how that was handled. It was like, I want to do that with the bosses in Doom. Most of the Bruiser Brothers, I think.
I'm trying to think how you would do that. Because Doom is kind of a, kill 'em all sort of theme.
Well, yeah, there's a lot more story than most people give it credit for. People just kind of look at that one John Carmack quote that I don't think he really I think he stopped standing by that a long time ago.
Yeah, but, like basically...
it wasn't even about Doom at all. It was about video games in general. It was all like, oh yeah, all video game stories are like this.
Well, here's the quote. Here I'm paraphrasing the quote he did. Plot in video games is like plot in a porno. You expect it to be there, but it's not really that important.
Yeah, it was pretty much that. And yeah, that wasn't a statement, an official statement from id Software. It wasn't even about Doom. He was talking about all video games in general, but then he really seemed to change his tune by the time he started making 2 Doom RPGs.
Well, the thing is, Doom and honestly Quake and honestly all of his games never really had a plot until about Doom 3. Now, Doom 3 is basically a game made in response to Half-Life. Let's be honest, and so that's really when we started to see a lot of lore being applied to Doom. Was in Doom 3, like. There was lore in Doom, like John. I think it's like Tom Hall wrote a freaking Doom Bible. Like he wrote a lot of lore for Doom that like ended up really not using. There was Doom novels that had a lot of it. They even named Doom Guy in some of those early stuff, But Doom never really had lore. Quake had some lore, most like the end screens, but it wasn't really until Doom 3 that they really started to put lore in.
That's the thing. That's kind of the perception I've been trying to fix here, or for lack of a better term, because it had lore right from the beginning. I'd say it was mostly Sandy Peterson who kicked it off. He was the writer for the games.
Tom Hall wrote a lot of it. Tom Hall wrote a lot of stuff that ended up not being used.
Yeah, but like a lot of stuff that. A lot of the initial actual writing was Sandy Peterson for definitely the first game. I'm pretty sure he also wrote the second, and then there are also contributions by people like John Romero and Kevin Cloud. But yeah, there's I've tried to compile it together. There was other stuff that was retroactively added, like Crash and Phobos in Quake 3 Arena, and the Cyber Demon Lord getting a backstory in Wolfenstein RPG.
There's also the fact that when they re-released Doom 64, they added a level that basically connected Doom 64 to Doom Eternal, and the Doom and Doom Eternal games actually did a lot for the lore of Doom 1 and 2 because they actually filled in a lot of the blanks. Because like Doom 1 and 2, the events actually do take place within the events of Doom and Doom Eternal. Yeah, the Doomslayer is canonically the same character. He's just they kind of elevate into a mythological figure. I mean, God, those games are so good.
Boo.
You don't like Doom Eternal?
No, I was booing to John not being able to join us.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been a treat.
Now, for me, this stuff, I look at it from the general audience perspective because economically, it's fine to work with your audience on a niche level, but sustainably, you have to appeal to a broader market. And like what you were talking about with the Doom stuff, retroactively adding lore, I think that was the smart move. You know, the idea behind the games in the beginning was just to have fun shooting things. And yes, you have to come up with some sort of story because there has to be a beginning, middle, and end to a video game. So there has to be an outline at the very least. But most people aren't going to question beyond what's the goal, how do I reach the goal. It's
See,
the interest that comes behind that prompting adding lore makes it better. But at the time, the game was literally just for having fun shooting stuff.
The problem with adding lore is if you're going to retroactively add lore, you need to do it in such a way that makes the old games better. You need to be additive, not subtractive. Because that's kind of the problem that Star Wars did with their new lore. Because like cloning okay, I'm invoking Rise of Skywalker. Sue me. In Return of Palpatine, it basically makes the events of Return of the Jedi completely pointless. It basically makes Vader's heroic sacrifice, all that stuff, like the ending to that movie is completely made pointless, completely redundant, because somehow Palpatine returned. And,
that's a product of bad writers. It's not a product of attacking.
They're adding lore. They're adding lore. They're adding stuff post hoc that is making previous stuff worse. What Doom did is they added lore that made the previous stuff better. So it just makes it's kind of a rising tide lifts all ships kind of scenario.
Yeah.
By adding new lore that makes the old stuff better, it's like, oh hey, I can enjoy this stuff now more. Like I can still go back and enjoy the old stuff, and with new context and whatnot. Hey, it's all better now, and it's this cohesive whole makes it better. Versus now the whole Star Wars stuff is just like such a mishmash of like all this stuff, and it's just, I mean, trust me, people have done days, weeks, years worth of content about this, so I don't even need to touch it. But that's just a big example I could think of off the top of my head of where you have lore that makes previous stuff actively worse versus what Doom did, where it makes it actively better. And that's, if you're going to add lore, you need to do it that way.
Yeah. Disney also came right out and said that they didn't care about the established canon. So they
clearly don't even care about their own canon. So
yeah, so they were up front that they were not trying to enhance the already created IP. They were just looking to make their own stuff using the names.
Yeah, if you want, like I know they threw out the old view, and that sucks.
Yeah, as Fiona Wolf and some of the others on Twitter often say, they skin suited it. They peeled the skin off and put it on something else.
No, there's no video games or novels or comic books to adapt. They just don't exist.
Yeah, I can't believe Kathleen Kennedy said that. Like, what? You've worked closely with Lucasfilm for decades. You have come on.
Obviously, she didn't.
So maybe
she maybe says that she did, but obviously she didn't.
To be fair, she was Spielberg's assistant for a while, and to give her some credit, she was actually a really good producer on a lot of the key Spielberg movies. So she's not completely without merit. I'm trying to be fair here. Like she did some really good stuff during Jurassic Park. She was instrumental for Back to the Future. She does have some good stuff she's done. So I'm trying to be not completely mean to her. But yeah. I don't know, because like my argument towards you know, the little stuff and like obviously you shouldn't make something for a niche audience. I agree with that. See, but on the opposite end is if you make something explicitly for general audiences, then you're just making something that's incredibly generic. Like
Right.
for example, Witcher is generic fantasy. You know, Star Wars, generic sci-fi. Like, what is special about these movies that makes people want to see them if they're just generic stock sci-fi or fantasy tropes? You know, and that's the danger where you go in the complete opposite direction. See, I'm a person who advocates for kind of meeting in the middle, where it's like you do stuff, you know,
Yes.
the fans to notice, but you do it for a general audience appeal, but you don't go too far into just making it just comes generic sci-fi tropes. You know,
Yeah.
and
Otherwise, why'd you
that's
buy the IP in the first place, or the license,
To
or
make
what?
money.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like with Disney. The whole reason they bought Marvel was because they wanted to capture the boys market. Because when they bought, because or in the late 2000s, they had the girls market down on lock, and
Yep.
they specifically bought Marvel, and this was their stated intention, was to cater to the boys market. And honestly, buying Marvel was a good investment for him because like they were on the rise, the MCU was wildly successful, and sure, Marvel was a good investment. But
Eh.
like they well, maybe not now, but like for 10 years, it was kicking butt. You know, merch wise, movie wise, it was a good investment. I think they've more than made up the $4 billion.
Yeah.
Star Wars, see, Star Wars was a little different because Marvel already had a filmmaking apparatus already in place when Disney bought them. Like Disney hardly had to do anything for Marvel,
Yep.
whereas with Lucasfilm, there was no filmmaking apparatus in place at Lucasfilm. They had to basically build it back up. Basically, Lucasfilm was already like someone else was going to buy it anyway. Like I know, like maybe Lucas, like that's like if I had a dimension hopping portal, I would go to the dimension where George Lucas got to make the sequel trilogy. That would be interesting.
I want to see those.
And at least would have been coherent. Let's admit that.
I don't know. His reimaginings of the original trilogy, I'm not sure.
I mean,
I think we put a
it,
lot more stock in Lucas than he deserves as a creator.
to be fair, the best Star Wars movies were the ones he had the least involvement in. Empire Strikes Back.
No.
And honestly, the reason why the classic trilogy works so well is because he was forced to collaborate.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
It's kind of a shame. Yeah, it's a shame because I love the idea of the special editions in theory and would love to see that kind of concept used more often, but they kind of got killed on arrival with just how much that was messed up. Like I'd like to see something like RoboCop or Spy Kids or what have you with the effects retouched. Like that'd be
I don't
like
know.
essentially
I think
remastered.
that I
They
feel
did
like
a RoboCop remake.
No, not a remake, reboot. Just put the film out.
Oh, like an update.
With the special effects, CGI, whatever. Retouched.
It doesn't work.
Like,
it doesn't, because of the film medium back then. It doesn't work. The contrast would be way too different.
To be fair, they did something similar with Star Trek. I remember when they released some of the Star Trek box sets, they actually like took the model shots and replaced them with CG, and they didn't actually look too bad. You know?
It was noticeable though. That's the point. Old projects are designed with a specific reality in mind. The universe is always changing. Things are different. Our perceptions of how we see things in the modern day are very different from how they saw things 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And
I mean, to be fair,
sci-fi can dream these things up, but the author still worked within the paradigm of that era's technology. So trying to apply 50 years later technology to ideas and imaginings and perspectives that were based on older concepts of physics would be really difficult. And it creates this like weird uncanny valley sort of situation where you watch it and go, I can tell that wasn't there.
I will say that's true, though some of the stuff I feel like, for example, the special effects at the end of Blade 1 look hilariously bad. What if someone were to go in, touch them up, and actually make them look good, but still like match the film stock? I think that could work. I think some of the crappy like CG effects from the 90s or even the 2000s, if we went back and made them better, that might work. Though the problem is when you go back to the 70s and the 80s, it's mostly physical, practical effects. Like, there's no way you're going to replace the Alien model in Aliens or Alien, because that thing still looks amazing to this day. Like, come on.
Oh yes, yeah. Like sure. I was just thinking like, well, it whatever these downsides might be, it can't be worse than Spawn's CGI. It often comes
Honestly,
up in
CGI
worst
wasn't that
CGI
bad. Like,
lists.
I really feel like Spawn, like the Spawn, like
namely like,
oh yeah,
what was it, Malbolgia?
Yeah, like imagine they went back and redid Malbolgia, or like the cape scene where like his cape's coming down, which that looked amazing at the time, but now it just looks so out of like that cape doesn't even match the film stock of that one. The lighting is all off. But like imagine like that kind of fix up where it's like crappy CGI, they actually did it better. I think that there might be a place for that.
Like yeah,
maybe, but I don't think
in, like video games, like the first 3 Uncharted games, or even World of Warcraft, or even Quake. Now that I think about it, have gotten updated models that have a bit more polygons and sharper textures and whatnot.
Yeah, especially
like,
with all the
kind of
RTX
idea.
stuff going on. Like with all the RTX stuff going on, there's been a thing. And plus, did you see NVIDIA is releasing this tech so that modders can basically remaster games? Like there's the remastered Morrowind, and then like Portal RTX. You know,
not really sure how
I think
works.
RTX is.
And remodeling is a bit different than what you were discussing, because it comes down to altering an original frame. You can always make something in a better format, but it's harder to insert a better format into an existing thing. It's like you can. I'll use I'll use Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow as an example. That movie was beautiful film. Movie was wholly shot with green screen, and even though it did have points where, because of the technology at the time, you could tell they weren't interacting with their environment, like there were just dimensional angle offsets that you could tell they weren't actually in there, like running down this 1940s street, but they were able to recreate the world back then using that technology to make it believable. Trying to insert a modernized version of a special effect that was created in an older film takes that, it alters that contrast way too hard. And that was the point I was trying to.
Imagine if they remade that film using the LCD tech we have now.
Right, exactly. It would be more realistic.
Like, I think that would actually look pretty cool, because they did this like the same style, but they just used like the LCD technology, you know, and then like maybe had some maybe a little bit of sets in the foreground. That would look really cool.
Yeah. And that would be remodeling the whole film. It wouldn't be trying to enhance a specific aspect of an already created picture. You know, it's like they used to have these really interesting little kids' toys that were kind of like a precursor to cartooning, where they had the cellophane cover on and a background image that was on a. Are
you talking about those tiger toys?
Kind of, yeah, where you could like draw on the cellophane in whatever you wanted, and then lay it over top of the background plate and doing so created a unique still, similar to how they used to do cellophane. I don't know
cell
what
animation.
the term is for cartooning.
Cell animation.
Yeah, so it'd be like that. You can obviously tell when you lay the cellophane down that the character is not part of the background. So it's not one whole image. You can obviously tell that it's two images, but that's what I think it would end up looking like if you tried to, say, take the blood exploding Deacon Frost and the end of Blade and redo just that sequence with CG. You would end up with this forefront backfront kind of contrast where it doesn't quite look right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would enhance the film enough for it to really be viable to do. It would be fun, it's like a fan project. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think a company would put any money into doing that, even for a re-release.
Yeah, it really depends on the film or like how popular it is. Like Star Trek is such a big thing. They can justify spending some money and going back and redoing things, but like a movie like Sky Captain, which is a niche of a niche of a niche audience to begin with, the best they can do is like, all right, here's an upgraded Blu-ray release. We made it look better. We didn't touch the film. Here, have it. Here,
right.
That's literally the best we can hope for is an upgraded Blu-ray release.
But that's like a serious upsell when it comes to production. That's something that you have to like really, really pitch to the company to get them to even do. Most of the time, these things are once and done. The remasters of Star Wars Original Trilogy with Lucas was literally him pushing for it because he wanted.
Or if you're Ripley and you wake up, be like, oh, I want to re-edit Blade Runner for the 15th time today.
Yeah, that's true. Whew.
This is my final cut V2, I swear, edit 16.
Yeah. But those are passion projects, if you have the creator right behind it. And that's sort of where people get bogged down. The designer of a project, like for myself writing my novels, I would love to spend my entire life just adding lore after lore after lore and little side things, but those things aren't really going to benefit the audience. They may benefit certain parts of the audience, but those things aren't going to benefit the audience in general. The audience in general is just going to enjoy the story for what it was, put it down and talk about it with their friends for a little while. So you have to find a balance between the oversell, like what was it? Epic rap battles, George R.R. Martin versus J.R.R. Tolkien. He says we don't need to know the history of every effing tree branch in one of the lines at Tolkien, and that's something that laymen who just sort of get into his works always complain about. There's so much exposition about this, that, and the other thing. But
it was a bit like Tom Clancy.
But the deep fans are like, yes, give me all the lore. Bring it to me now.
I mean,
so
you see that
you
with
have to find a good balance between.
You see that with a couple different authors where they have like one seminal work, like Tolkien, it's Lord of the Rings, or even stuff like Ender's Game with Orson Scott Card.
Yep.
Where it's like they have these one central works. Yeah, Orson Scott Card is another example of this because like Orson Scott Card's Enderverse is like a spider web of novels where it's like, but they all branch off from Ender's Game. Where it's like you got Bean's trilogy where it's like Ender Shadow and his stuff. You got the Speaker trilogy, which is like 3,000 years. It's like they all kind of they all kind of like intersect, but like it's just a spider web of stuff, and it all centralized in Ender's Game, which is like the book he's most known for.
Mm-hmm. And that's it. And with stuff like that, a new reader who comes into it, you still have to create each individual book as its own standalone. Because a new reader coming into it is not going to know what X character looks like unless you describe them. They're not going to know what characters are talking about unless you take an opportunity to basically give a short briefing in exposition. If you don't do that, then the reader's going to be like, I have no clue what's going on.
Though I will say,
Yeah.
on the flip side, sometimes when you have something that's so iconic, sometimes you need to have that previous stuff in there. Like for a lot of the Star Wars novels, like for example, I remember in the '90s, Star Wars tried to do its own Goosebumps series called Galaxy of Fear.
Yeah.
I remember reading this one book called Terror at Holographic Fun World, and Lando was in it. That was the hook, that Lando was in this book, and he was a side character.
Yep.
But like he was the thing that okay, this is Star Wars. Lando's here. But otherwise, it was just about some kids that go to a holographic space station amusement park, and they have to go through these trials and tribulations. There's very little of it that does with Star Wars. I mean, it was a decent kids book, but Lando was there. You know?
They do that all the time. It's marketing.
Oh yeah. So it's like with some of these stuff where it's like you kind of saw in The Hobbit where Gandalf showed up. They did scenes with Elrond where it's like the main party went to Rivendell, and I'm sorry, but that first movie plays out like such a D&D campaign. Like my favorite scene is where you have Elrond literally running a detect magic check on it. It's like, and it's just like that Goblin Slayer is like +5 against goblins. It's just like, if you watch those films as like a D&D film, they are so good as D&D films.
Oh yeah, one of the things I had almost forgotten to mention was when I got into the Trails of Cold Steel video game series. I could tell it was part of a much bigger franchise with like multiple other sub-franchises within it. Almost a sort of video game equivalent of a cinematic universe. And I started with Trails of Cold Steel, which is in itself within the even bigger Legend of Heroes franchise. I look right on the back of the box, and it just straight up spells it out in one of the screenshots. A vast storyline for Legend of Heroes fans and newcomers alike. So it just had it spelled out right there in text on the back that this is something that respects the broader IP it comes from, but this is also a great entry point for newcomers. Like, yeah, sounds like that's for me.
Right. That's how you get people.
Yeah, definitely.
We get you can get a little lost in the weeds when it comes to trying to overexpand any sort of broad universe. That's something that I've been thinking about a lot because I have one that I'm working on. Making sure each individual story has its own uniqueness and its own flow, but still attaches itself to the overarching storyline. Using the MCU as a reference, you can nitpick all the fine details that each individual film got wrong when it came to the broad spanning universe, how this thing contradicts this thing, if you sit down and want to watch them all like that. But to the average viewer who is just popcorn in this stuff, like, okay, that was an awesome movie and it's part of this bigger story and it had these spoon-fed points. So it works. It's good. That's why they got all the ratings that they did. Not because they were worried about adhering to the lore points. They were willing to take those small risks of diverging away in order to tell a good 90-minute story.
The problem with that, the canon doesn't matter because general audience argument is you get like what's happening now with a lot of these overzealous creators where it's like, oh, we're gonna change these characters. Oh, this white character is black now, or blah blah,
those are gender swap, race swap, whatever you want to call it, whitewashing, color washing, whatever. None of that matters.
It does.
It's
because if canon doesn't matter, nothing matters. That's the entire
point of an adaptation.
If anything, but here's the thing. yes, you change stuff with adaptation. We agreed upon that, but it's
Yeah.
still it's a rubber band. Adaptation is a rubber band. You can only stretch it so far before it snaps. Okay,
True.
that is the point. And when you try and do the whole canon doesn't matter, nothing matters. What's the point of even caring about story? What's even caring about all this other stuff? And honestly, it portrays general audiences like they're just a bunch of like mindless sheep that are just brainless. It kind of talks down to the audience. It makes them seem like they don't care about canon. They don't care about continuity. Like for example, it almost seems like based off of your argument, if they replaced Nick Fury David Hasselhoff, if they replaced Samuel Jackson with Nick Fury as you get what I'm saying. In the next movie, it's supposedly because canon doesn't matter. That's okay, But I mean, look at you have Black Panther. They lost Chadwick Boseman. They created a movie, and it did literally half of the return of Black Panther.
Yeah.
So if people didn't care about canon, if canon really did not matter, don't you think Black Panther would have made maybe close to what the other one did? But because people cared about Chadwick Boseman as a character, they cared about that character, they cared about the continuity of that character. That's why that film. Well, there's many reasons probably why it underperformed.
But that's a good question though. Why is Samuel L. Jackson accepted as Nick Fury?
Well, it was a change made early on, and he's right for the role.
How?
His characterization, his acting, and it just works within the context of the film. Like, I'm not saying
that's the point I'm making. Is that
it
really doesn't affect anything.
But the thing is, there are sometimes you can change stuff and it works, but sometimes you stretch. That's what I keep saying. Adaptations are a rubber band. You can only stretch them so far before they break. Like, for example, an example of stretching it and it's fine. You had the Black Gordon in the Batman. The actor was great. He was fine. Zoe Kravitz. She's not the first Black woman to play Catwoman. She's not even the second. She's the third Black woman to play Catwoman. So who cares? I'm not saying these changes are fine. My thing is, if you get too overzealous with it, for another example of like continuity, if people didn't care about continuity, why did No Way Home make so much money? And that film was basically nostalgia bait. They brought back Tobey Maguire, a Spider-Man who hasn't appeared since 2007 as Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield, who up until I'd say about 5 years ago, the Amazing Spider-Man films weren't really that highly regarded. No. But they've kind of gone under reevaluation, rightly so, And they brought back those Spider-Man, and that film worked really well. Like I'm saying, canon is elastic. That's my argument. Canon is not some rigid thing you have to adhere to. But at the same time, you've got to be careful because with it being elastic, you can only stretch it so far before it breaks. That's my argument.
I see what you're saying, but I think you're missing a really key detail, is that the elastic is based on who's pulling it. And that was my point with the Sam Jackson thing. There's no good reason for Sam Jackson as Nick Fury. The character was. That's not. And if they had written Sam Jackson's Nick Fury as, say, with the demeanor of Phil Coulson, would it have worked?
The only thing I can say is the ultimate version of Nick Fury was based on Sam Jackson. I mean, I'm not even sure if the story is true, but like this is just a common story that's kind of paired around where it's like Nick Fury was black in the Ultimate Verse, and he looked like Nick Fury. Then they made some sort of deal or whatever. I'm not even sure if that story is true. That's just the one that's parroted around. But
right,
Nick Fury was black in the Ultimate Verse, so there was some precedence before it.
That's the point I'm making, and that was a writer's decision, and the writer did it in such a way that made it enjoyable. So it's not so much that canon is elastic and there's only so far that you can pull it. It's more that canon is dependent upon the writer that's using it, and if the writer using it
the person pulling the canon is the writer.
It's not going to work.
I think we're agreeing on the same thing here. I think we're kind of just the thing is canon is the rubber band. The person pulling it is the writer. That's the argument I'm trying to make. is the creators are this is like the finger is the writer pulling it, and it's like you can stretch things a little bit, you can alter little things. I mean, ultimately, it's you got to make it work. If it works, no one cares. Like
It's interesting what you were saying about the whole Fury Coulson thing, Daniel, because that got me thinking of the Ultimate Avengers animated movies, where Nick Fury seemed very Phil Coulson like, what we would think of today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is you can take little inches in fiddling with a character, fiddling with a story, as long as that's enjoyable.
Yes,
it makes sense. What people get pissed off about with the swap changes, a lot of the times it's just based on that minute detail, and there's no real information about it. I'll use, for example, even though it turned out to be just as bad as predicted, the concept of the Little Mermaid switch. People reacted to that without actually witnessing the story. They reacted to the trailer and gave the writer no chance to hang themselves. And that was my problem with that.
There were behind the scenes interviews. There were other factors.
Also, the counter argument is
those are all side things, though.
No. The point of the trailer is it's supposed to get you excited for the movie. It's advertising. It is like that's the whole point of these trailers, these previews. The whole point of everything. It's marketing. And if the trailer does a bad job of communicating the story, that's a fault of them. That's not a fault of the audience. The audience reaction. The audience will react however they want. And if the trailer cannot convey what it is, that is a fault of the marketing, it's a fault of the creators, and is no way a fault of the audience. The only thing I will say is I do feel like sometimes, like you said, they don't give things a chance. But in the Little Mermaid's case, they were pretty much right out the gate. Like they did this. Like, for example, the dreaded, we're changing this to fit modern audiences.
Apparently they're not even allowing a romance. Like, there's not even going to be the romance. It's gone.
Right. And so those decisions are based on the writer's choice. That's the point I'm making, is that
writers,
like
producers,
with the Sonic stuff, that people didn't like the original version of Sonic's form in the movie. And there was a huge outcry. They changed it, and the story was still sound. When you got to watching the film, it was enjoyable. It would not have been as enjoyable using the original character model that they put out in that trailer. I agree. I agree. But the Little Mermaid trailer was vague enough at the time when the outrage started. I'm not talking about everything that came out after. I'm talking about the original trailer outrage.
It looks like if you look at it, the visuals are so drab. They're so it's so dark and moody. It's like
it was boring.
It was like the Little Mermaid was a color explosion. Like I'm sorry, but in the age of like rainbow everything, Little Mermaid, you could have had like literally, you could have had fish doing the shape of the pride flag, and like you might be able to get away with it, But
those are different things. Talking about the trailer as being boring and drab is fine. The outrage I'm specifically speaking of was the reveal of Ariel. That's what I'm talking about, because we're discussing these canon stretches.
I don't believe in.
You look at.
This is kind of a thing that it's kind of, some people could get into this whole like, oh, here's things you're allowed to be outraged about. Here's what you're not allowed to be outraged about, and I kind of reject that notion.
Yeah, you're allowed to feel what you feel.
The way that you're coming across to me is like, oh, it's okay to be upset about the dark and drabness, but it's not okay to be upset about the race change, and I wholeheartedly reject that notion.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's why I said it's how it's coming across to me.
That's not where I'm getting at. And I'll finish my point. The reveal of Ariel, which was what specifically everyone was outraged about. We can argue about the tiny semantic details of the whole trailer all we want, but the reveal of Ariel that pissed so many people off was not giving the film due chance. I'm not specifically talking about the actress. I'm not specifically talking about the trailer. I'm talking about the film itself. The outrage over the change of the way that Ariel looked in the trailer did not give the film itself a chance. And I'm fully behind bad writers hanging themselves with bad films. That's how you weed out bad writers. So if it was a horrible film, it should have been lambasted, and it was lambasted for being a horrible film. But at the time, the film had not come out, and there was so much I'm going to curb myself a little bit, BS rage over just the image of that girl. I had issues with the music. I didn't think the way they went slow with the sound.
Thing, right? Like,
Sorry?
You are aware of the whole gender side thing. Like, it's not a it's an identifiable trend. Okay, I think that's how I'd like to put it. Of redhead Caucasian characters getting race swap with black characters. It is a noticeable trend. Like, it is something that it is a noticeable trend. Like, it's not.
I agree.
Yeah, I'd say that certainly played into it, because like it's something that's just happened again and again, and people have seen this song and dance before. It was less about just the film itself and more not again.
It was
like,
up to the creators to effectively communicate. Like, you want people to give it a chance. They didn't do themselves any favors with how they communicated.
They didn't. Correct.
You know, if they would have said, "Hey, we're doing this because she's a really good," or give it a chance. No, it's race swap. If you don't like it, you're racist, and that is just an inflammatory way. The way these companies communicate their ideas. It's inflammatory. It is rage bait. They're like, it almost feels like they're just doing it on purpose to get people talking, which I
think they are.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like I had because like for, the whole conversation with like in the Last of Us thing, they changed the actual daughter. They made her black instead of white. Mm-hmm. To me, that's like, why? It's like why change your race? Like this isn't even a best actor for the role. It's like one scene. And I guarantee you, there's plenty of white actors who could have done that role perfectly fine. It just, why did you change it to black? It just felt arbitrary. Like, I understand when you make a change because, I'm trying to cast. It's 2003. I'm casting for Daredevil and the Kingpin movie. Another Kingpin. I'm practicing the Kingpin, and Michael Clark Duncan walks in, and oh my God, he does a great performance. He is the Kingpin. I can't see anyone else. I'm going to cast this black guy as a white guy role. And he knocked it out.
That's something I've often thought about before, because like, especially at the time, like, it would be insanely difficult. Would be ridiculously difficult to really get the Kingpin comic accurate in live action. Like, how many actors are you going to find with that kind of build? They eventually, in the Netflix reboot, they found someone closer, but yeah, like, I guess I could see them being like, there's no way we're going to get this perfectly one-to-one accurate. Let's just do a very different look that still has the same spirit. And I think they pulled it off.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Gordon in the Batman. Like, I'm a fan of that actor. Like, I saw him in Westworld, Hunger Games, and knowing how he acts, as soon as I heard he was cast as Gordon, I'm like, okay, yep, that works. I didn't even question it because I knew, like, given what kind of actor he is, he's perfect for Gordon. Like, he's a perfect Jim Gordon kind of character. So, like, I was like, I was like, okay, yeah, he's a great actor. He's perfect for that role. And same thing with Zoe Kravitz. Like, she's the third black actress to play Catwoman. So it's like, who cares at this point?
Yeah, like with that Daredevil movie, it just seemed like, yes, do this very different take here would be better than this kind of lukewarm, uncanny valley of someone who just almost looks like him, but not quite. But then this was like, yes, I like how it was handled here.
See, I'm not a diversity for diversity's sake kind of person. I'm more like, if right actor for the right role, or if you want to have some diversity, maybe introduce a new character. Like for example, Finn. I never had a problem with Finn. In fact, I think Finn got done dirty. Like, I think he should have been a Jedi.
I agree.
He probably should have even been the main character, maybe. You were
I
the
don't
one
know.
introduced first.
And like Poe Dameron, their bromance is cool. You know, like I actually like there's some stuff I do like about the sequel trilogy. Like I like the idea of Kylo Ren's story. I like the kind of like he's got a really good foundation. Like the whole unfinished, uncut gem, the burden of legacy. Like that's actually really interesting stories. Like
Yeah.
like I thought would be really cool.
Agreed.
The whole kind of thing. You know, I'm sure I'm not a fan of Ray, but I'm sure Daisy Ridley is a nice enough person. Like if I ended up sitting next to her at a table, like the most I'd say is like I wasn't really a fan of your character, to be honest, but I wouldn't insult her,
Yeah, there's no need for that.
Exactly. But
I
do feel like sometimes like they like the whole Kelly Marie Tran thing. Like I never really saw the mass amounts. Like I feel like all the hate was directed at her character and not really as her as a person. Like I was very deep in the fandoms. Like I feel like they overblow some of the hate some of these people get. Like
well, that was unfair to her. It was really unfair to her what happened because it wasn't her fault that the character sucked.
Yeah, like that. I was just about to say that. Like, yeah, her character sucked, but like, I'm sure she's at and it was funny is like I remember being in the fandom. It's like she showed up on a carpet where like her boobs were on display. All of a sudden, oh, we love her now because she's got the whatever. Yes, people are stupid.
Yeah,
but like
it's pretty dumb. But it all hinges on the writing. Is the point that I was making? Because to me, I don't see people when it comes to these sorts of things. Like I'm not a fan of the thought exercise of who would be good for this role. I look for accuracy in the original concept, and that was what I was talking about with the Samuel L. Jackson thing, and to a certain extent even with the Ving Rhames thing. Yeah, he did great as the Kingpin in that Daredevil movie, given what he had. Or not Ving Rhames, Michael Clark Duncan.
You're mixing up your angry black men.
I am. Sorry. Yeah.
You know what might be a kind of a niche example.
Rhames, but what was
I
it?
love Ving Rhames too. He's a great actor. Yeah. Just don't put a gimp ball in his mouth. He might get mad.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It got caught and like crosswired in my mind because I was thinking about the Pulp Fiction character Rhames played, and yeah.
English, mother effer, do you speak it?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Whew. Anyways, so yeah, with Samuel L. Jackson, with Michael Clark Duncan, they did a great job with what they were given, but in my head, thinking about Nick Fury in an Avengers productive environment wouldn't have been a black man. In my head, the Kingpin in a Daredevil movie wouldn't have been a black man. And those things are surprisingly good. And that's the point. That's what makes them so interesting, is that they're surprisingly better than you expected them to be at that moment when you look at it.
See, the difference between I keep going back to Batman. They just cast him in the role. They never made a big deal about him being black.
No, they didn't.
Like, there was some stuff about like Zoe Kravitz and whatnot. I think but whatever. But like him being a Gordon, that was never in question. Then the marketing, they just market him as Gordon. They never made a big deal about him being black.
What's another example I feel I should point out? I don't know if you might remember the name offhand, but J.D. Morrison of the Devil May Cry series. He debuted in the Devil May Cry animated series where he's white, but then they finally made him canon in the video games in Devil May Cry 5, but he's black. And I actually prefer the new version. The new one has more personality that really bounces off the characters better.
Oh, and
a surprising example of something better than originally intended.
Or like Devil May Cry 5, another example of like introducing a POC character into your universe, like the gunsmith girl. She is adorable. I love her. You know, I think she's a great character. She's a great addition to that universe. And the fact that she's black has nothing to do with her character. And I think that's how you should treat
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's
Agreed.
like some version of the events of the animated series are canon, and they just kind of made some tweaks to fit with the games. Like, we finally have a confirmed name of the city. It's Redgrave. Finally, we've been in this place so many times, but never heard any name other than the city. So it was like, yeah,
It's
when's that Devil May
city.
Cry? What's the spoon guy? Tick crossover.
Yes.
Wait, there's a Devil May Cry Tick crossover?
No. He's just talking about how in the Take they just refer to it as the city without
Same
name.
with Teen Titans.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be called
we
Jump
share-
City, but it's
Yeah.
never said in the show itself.
It's a
think
common trope.
I think usually Teen Titans hang out in San Francisco, which actually makes a lot of sense considering like the Teen Titan is like on an island in a bay, so like it makes a lot of sense that like Titan's Tower would be out in San Francisco Bay.
Yeah, like that's what I was saying. I've heard that it apparently takes place in some place called Jump City, but it's just like never said out loud in the show.
Well,
I think in the comics, I know in the show, you know, the Titans Tower thing was in San Francisco. I think in the comics, they were from San Francisco. I think.
Yeah. And in Young Justice, they're in like some little bar harbor place. I don't even.
Yeah, they're in a couple places.
I just know Mount Justice is located in some sleepy little bar, like harbor town. So it's like it is what it is. With that,
it's a lot easier to make up your own city for these kind of things because it gives you more leeway for like setting it in New York. You're kind of restricted to all right. This is what New York is. This is the city. You know, you're kind of like, you know, it's you kind of do that kind of thing. Whereas like Gotham, you can literally make it whatever you want.
Yeah, I did that.
But then there comes the struggle of where is it then, and why can't I find it on the map?
Gotham,
when you start, like especially when you start intertwining it with saying that we've got Gotham City, but also New York City exists. Then eventually there might come some point where you have to justify, okay, where exactly is it, and why don't we see it on a map?
Yeah,
canonically, Metropolis in Gotham in like New Jersey.
Kind of, yes, but that's up to writer interpretation. They leave it ambiguous so that each individual writer can do what they need to do with it. And I did the same thing.
Like in the Snyderverse, they basically made it like a San Francisco, Oakland kind of thing, like across the bay.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Technically, Legacy of Heroes happens in my fictional version of Niagara Falls, New York, but I don't explicitly come out and say that. I use individual landmarks in the description because they were relevant and a great place to backdrop it, but I don't come right out and say they're based in Niagara Falls. It's just that's the landscape I chose as the background.
Yeah,
and then you got
I take a different approach. Like since I'm from Michigan, in particular the Metro Detroit area, I literally kind of set my stories in like my own backyard kind of thing. Like Screechier takes place in Ann Arbor, which I'm like 20 minutes from Ann Arbor, and then like Turn Samurai takes place in a futuristic Detroit. Like it's just really nice because like then I can literally set some of these scenes in like actual locations. I can go there, I can take photographs, and I'm not like beholden to it. Like say there's a glass shop there. No, that's gonna be a martial arts studio kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then you got a weird case like Sonic the Hedgehog, where where for those who are not quite that familiar with Sonic lore, this was mostly in like the adventure-ish era and Unleashed, but pretty much the way Sonic's Earth works is that there's a whole bunch of these XPs of real-world locations instead of the actual locations themselves. Like Central City is San Francisco, Chunnan is China, Spagonia is Italy, I believe. All just these XPs, except one. There is one real-world location that is also in Sonic. You know what it is?
What?
What's that?
Japan. Confirmed by
Sure.
by a throwaway line in Shadow the Hedgehog. I think a random gun soldier will say it in gameplay sometime, but Japan is mentioned. So that's the one, apparently the one place the one real place that exists in Sonic.
Yeah. Those are probably just writer jokes.
I swear, if it's Sonic 3, someone mentions Mobius, I'm going to squeal. Because canonically in the Sonic movies, it's like an interplanetary thing, so Mobius could exist as a planet.
True.
That might have been where Sonic came from anyway, where all the owls and echidnas and stuff are. They just haven't really seen. I don't think they even mentioned South Island.
I'm really excited. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do for Sonic 3, because obviously they're probably going to do Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Adventure kind of thing.
My theory has been that it's going to be some kind of amalgamation.
Rogue the Bat.
Like they're probably going. Like I think they're going for some kind of amalgamation of Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Sonic CD, but it might not necessarily follow the exact plot of any of them.
That might be too much of a mixed bag.
I'm just upset they skipped over Metal Sonic.
Not really, because like the Captain Underpants movie is an amalgamation of the first 5 books.
Good point.
It just depends on the exact ratio.
I'm just saying, like, from a storyline perspective, it would have made so much sense for Jim Carrey to be like, oh, I'm going to make my own Sonic, and he uses, like, the quill or something to literally make Metal Sonic. Like, that would have been a perfectly fine escalation of events, but I think Jim Carrey's done, so we're not going to see him.
Yeah, that seems to still be in flux. Like, I've heard that apparently he's interested in doing it one last time, but his ultimatum is fat suit. He wants to have a fat suit to finally just be a completely as game accurate as possible, or he's not going to do it.
His final Robotnik form.
To be fair, if anyone can make fat suit and Robotnik work, it is Jim Carrey. Let's be honest. He can make it work.
I think so.
I honestly think, like, I really feel like these films really help Jim Carrey because he's basically his 90s Jim Carrey form. And I feel like he really enjoys these films because he gets to cut loose and be kind of like his old self. Because, like, I don't know, he was really kind of in, like, a really depressive mood. They started doing these movies, and I don't know if you noticed, but, like, he started kind of, his mood kind of brightened those few years he was doing those movies. I feel like they're helpful to him.
Maybe. Certainly hope so. He was going kind of off the deep end there for a while.
And then he kind of stopped once he did the Sonic movies because I feel like, he's in his 90s form. He's like, because he's just like, it's just like, it's like not even missed a beat from like the 90s. Like this is like Ace Ventura, Mask. He is like in top form, and
Yeah, he had his Ebenezer Scrooge moment. I guess he started to notice, like, wait a minute, it seems like the people I've been trashing are actually excited to see me. What am I doing with my life? I don't want this to be my legacy. And he just...
I don't know. For me, the thing that kind of upset me was he did Kick-Ass 2. And honestly, he was pretty good in that movie, to be fair. But, like, then he did, like, oh, guns are bad, you know, but, like, he didn't return his paycheck for Kick-Ass 2.
No, he's playing a character. I wouldn't have expected him to.
No, but, like, he's all, like, guns bad. Why didn't he donate? Like, the fact that he accepted money to do that role, but he didn't, you know, but then he denounced it, but still kept the money, is a bit hypocritical.
What do you mean?
Like, if he's that dead set against guns, why didn't he take the money where he literally did a movie that promoted guns and violence and all that stuff and donated it to a charity? Like that, you know, but by keeping the money, he's tangentially promoting, he's tangentially approving of it. The fact that he kept the money.
Interesting.
It's just hypocritical. The fact that he did it like right before the movie was supposed to drop and all that stuff, and he just didn't. You know, he still kept the money. It's just like.
Hadn't thought about it that way.
I mean, I like the guy. It's just some stuff he says I disagree with. That's all.
Oh, yeah. Well, everybody says stuff we disagree with.
Yeah.
So then, like, let's say, what about you then, Daniel? What is anything in particular you would really like to have the reins to adapt?
If I could adapt something, I don't think I ever could. But in a perfect world, if I could adapt something to, say, television on a theoretically perfect basis, it would be Zelazny's Chronicles of Amber. It's a very old
See.
It's a very old sci-fi fantasy series, but it is something I have loved since I was like 13 years old when I first read them. Very broad, a little bit sarcastic for its time, which I thought was kind of cool. And I think it would make for a great long-running series if you set a hard ending to the ending of the books itself. And that would require doing two different storylines because I think maybe 3/4 of the books are based on one character, and then the last quarter are based on the son of that character.
Looks
So,
like there's 10 of them.
Yeah,
Hmm.
really cool little pulp series.
Yeah, I was thinking
The idea behind it, is I'm not going to go into too great detail. It would take forever, but there is a prime universe that all other dimensions are based on, and each dimension is some slight variation that bubbles out, just as we've covered in comic books before. But the main character is one of 9 sons, the princes of the king who had ruled over everything. They have the ability to travel back and forth between the varied dimensions, using their inherent magical ability. And there's this big political drama, a lot of mystery, great fantasy elements with these like nice slides into modern and somewhat science fiction levels. Yeah, I think it would make a fantastic series. And they did tease at one point that they were considering doing it. And I went, if they fuck this up, I'm going to blow the world up. Pardon my language. Because
You had one job.
Yeah, it's,
yeah.
I was just going to say, I don't know
If you're going to turn somebody into a supervillain, mess with their favorite franchise.
I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but I was just looking and I found an article here. Looks like
Yeah, it was like, I think
Stephen Colbert, of all people, is adapting it into a TV show.
Yeah, but it's sort of stagnated, so my fingers crossed that they just let it go. Because I don't want that. But if I could make it and do it with free reign to make it as accurate to the books as I saw fit, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I just found an article from this week.
Oh, wow. I didn't see that one. Really cool.
There is one book series where if I was like a director and I had some clout, one that I would push for. Are you guys aware of the Seventh Tower series by Garth Nix?
I have heard of it.
It's a pretty good series. Basically, it's about this world that like is covered in darkness because like this thing called the Veil. And then you have like the castle, and you have like these ice crawls, which are like ice Vikings kind of thing. And the magic system is based off of a thing called the Sunstone. So you do like light-based magic. And in the castle, you have a caste system based off of the Roy G. Biv color spectrum. So like people of the red are like right at the bottom, and violet is like, you know, practically royalty. And then there's
Inverted?
Yeah.
Roy G. Biv, you know, red, orange.
Yeah,
Yellow,
the
green,
red is at the
blue,
top.
the violet.
Purple, the violet
Yeah.
is at the bottom.
Yeah. So it's an inverted.
Yeah,
color
and then
spectrum.
and then there's this alternate reality called Anar, where the people from the castle, they can go there and they can bind a creature to them. You know, collecting Pokemon, and it's like your companion. When you go back to the world, they become your spirit shadows. So it's kind of got some interesting stuff. There's a lot of little interesting things. Basically, this guy named Tal, who their parents are part of the Orange Cast, and like he's trying to find a sunstone, so he climbs a castle. Then he falls down and lands with the ice crawls, and there's like Mila, and like it's pretty cool. Honestly, it's a bit shorter. Like honestly, it's like 7 books, but like each book is honestly like kind of rather short. It would make for a good trilogy. Honestly, it would probably work as a trilogy.
Something I'd kind of like to do based on one book that I think could be done on a fairly low budget. Might seem a little weird, but I would love to take a crack at the Screw Tape letters.
I believe they've tried adapting that for the stage. I don't know that it's ever been done in television or film.
I think there was like some kind of live action fan made trailer, but that's about the closest we've got.
Huh. That would be cool though.
Do you think we'll ever see Super Smash Brothers the movie? Like I would really love it if they did like a Super Smash Brothers cinematic universe.
They might. Nintendo does seem to want to really branch out with cinema. Apparently, they want to get a bunch of their brands.
Imagine Chris Pratt's Mario, Ryan Reynolds Pikachu,
yeah,
and then you have like the Sonic all in the same movie. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, you better get on with your Metroid movie then.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, the Mario movie actually looks pretty decent. Like the world itself, it looks spot on. As far as Chris Pratt, I mean, he's okay. I don't really think like people are kind of raging, but it's like whatever. I know some people are like raging about like, oh, Princess Peach, she's saving herself. He's like, I mean, I get it. I get why people are outraged, but for me, it's just like, whatever.
Yeah, it seems like jumping the gun on that one. She didn't really do anything. All she did was stand and walk forward. That's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the fact that they're incorporating Mario Kart into this, which it makes sense, makes perfect sense. Mario, it's like,
yeah.
I just hope they
capitalizing on those nostalgia feels.
Yep. Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of the music. That one clip that they showed with Mario and Toad running around through the Mushroom Kingdom trying to get to the castle played a myriad of different Mario tunes in the background.
Have you ever seen Illuminations? No, it's like Imagine-y. Sorry, it was Imagine-y did a pitch for a Zelda movie. Because Imagine-y was the people who did like Astro Boy and a couple other kind of movies.
TMNT.
Yeah, like did you ever see their pitch for Zelda? It actually looked kind of decent.
Yeah, I remember that. Definitely they definitely wanted their own art style.
I feel like Zelda is one of those things where it actually could work in live action. Like, do you remember that IGN fake trailer from back in the day?
Oh, the future one?
No, they did a Zelda.
Oh, we know that. That's right, an April Fool's joke.
Yeah,
that was really good. Like, I actually think if you even adapting Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it would probably be easier to use the newer one.
John's famous now.
Who's famous now?
Look in the comments, Slug.
Oh, I don't tend to pay attention to that.
No. Next down one. Did you guys see that like Master TDS actually got quoted in a Fox News article?
I think he mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, I actually read the article. Yeah, they meant like, dude, we're famous now. Well, not where we are, but they are, but still.
I gotta reach for that caboose.
Poor John. No amount of showers will fix that.
Oh, man, Movie Bob. That's the name I remember.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Yeah. Oh my god, I can just see John getting a quote tweet. Like, imagine if he gets the ire of Will Wheaton. You just know he's gonna do the gif, the "Shut Up, Wesley" gif. I'm
there you go.
Yeah,
definitely.
Oh boy.
Why did you say that name? Like, seriously.
Summoning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I followed Lindsay Ellis a little bit afterwards after the whole thing. Like her loose cannon series was okay, but like she really does come across as like a 40-year-old Karen that still thinks she's hip with the kids. Like that's how Lindsay Ellis kind of comes across to me. Like remember when like she upset some people online? She did a 2-hour video kind of explaining why they're wrong. It's like not.
I mean, I really liked her video where she compared and contrasted Moana and Pocahontas. That was really interesting. That actually helped with some of my own rating.
And I'm not like some of her nostalgia shit content was pretty good. Like I really liked her review of Matilda, guest starring Marley Madison or whatever. Like the actual Matilda, I thought that was like, oh, cool. You know,
That's pretty neat.
well, that was kind of during a period where where Marley was involved with a lot of the Channel Awesome stuff. So made sense. But yeah, that was a cool review. Like, one of the like another one of my favorites was when Doug reviewed the Avatar movie and it guest starred Dante Bosco, and he was cosplaying as Zuko. So it's like. Oh my god!
Don't
What
mess
did she
with
say
Dune.
about Dune? I actually really
Which
like
Dune would it have been? The new one or the old one?
I like the new Dune. I really like it. Like, sure, it's long, but like, it's one of those movies where it kind of puts you in like a meditative trance. Like, you kind of watch it and you're just kind of floating through the movie. It's like, it's actually really enjoyable. It's like it's a very relaxing movie.
I watched it. I was not as fond of it as the earlier film.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the written stories, so I agree. Don't mess with Dune. But yeah, I don't have any complaints about the new one, but it didn't exactly invigorate me in any way.
I will say I feel like the decision to split it up into 2 3-hour movies is actually probably the best decision they could have made.
Oh, probably, yeah. I mean, they did. What was it? They did Children of Dune as a mini series in order to, scope it, and then they condensed it into like one film, which I thought was a really bad decision.
Well, you mean the 80s one?
Yeah.
Well, that was just like. Did you ever see the documentary for like Yoda Hoskry's Dune? I hear that one was like really crazy. Like they had E.R. Geiger involved with that one.
Huh.
That was being developed in the 70s.
Yeah.
That was really crazy. But yeah, Dune is like one of those like beasts of a book to adapt. Like Lord of the Rings was a beast of a book, Honestly, Wheel of Time as well. Like Wheel of Time can only be done in a miniseries, but they totally dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah, big fail.
Like I'm a huge Wheel of Time fan, like huge mega fan. And I couldn't even finish the first episode. I think I got like less than halfway through the first episode, and like honestly, in the first 30 seconds, I was already pissed off because like her opening narration, where she literally like, "Oh, those sexist men, they did this thing, they broke the world," It's like there's adaptation, there's ignoring the lore, and then there's actively spitting on the lore. There's like active, aggressive, I hate the lore, I'm going to create something to actively shit on the lore. That is what they did.
Yep. Yeah. I know a lot of fans really enjoyed the show.
Those people aren't fans, they're tourists.
It didn't. Well, no, I mean, I literally know like friends of mine that are huge fans of the original content
They're
that
morons.
really liked the show, and I was like,
they are morons.
I'm
going to be blunt here. If you're a fan of Wheel of Time and you actively like the show, you're a fucking idiot. I'm like, I don't care. Like, you are a brain dead moron. Like, I'm gonna stop right there because I was about to do some zombie stuff and that actually might have gotten me into trouble. But like, I'm capping myself there because even I realized I was kind of a bit going too far with that one. But yeah, like for example, giving Perrin a wife for the sole purpose of killing her. When like especially fans know Fail, one of the greatest characters in the series, and a great wife to Perrin, and it's like, why? Why would you give her a wife when every fan knows you're just going to kill off? Because they're not going to pass up on adapting Fail. They're not going to just not adapt her because he's such an awesome character. And so,
if the show even gets that far,
like as far as the race changes, it does break the lore for the Two Rivers. Because the thing about the Two Rivers is, it's actually a plot point that the isolation of the Two Rivers is what helped the Old Blood run strong.
right?
And they did get little diversifying afterwards. But the fact there's so many of these different races, like that's the whole plot point. The reason Rand stands out so much is because they're so homogenous, and like I feel like making them all diverse kind of breaks that. But like that's it's kind of like what you said, a bit of a nitpick. Like I don't like it, but and it's like. As far as the actors go, I mean, they're okay. Like the actor for Perrin, like sure he's black, but like, I don't know. He has a build of like a blacksmith. He's got the beard at least. Like, I feel like all
beard
things
supremacy.
Well, yeah, I feel like all things notwithstanding, I probably could have like tolerated that Perrin. Like I feel like that actor probably would have done a decent job with Perrin given a better script. So
Probably.
at least with
All
the
comes
Avatar
down to the
show,
writers.
at least with the Avatar show, they're actually trying to make a point of casting to the races of each nation, because each nation is actually kind of coded to certain like nationalities.
It was the original idea, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like they're actually doing a pretty good job of that. Like I really don't have any problem with the Avatar castings so far. So
All that just to make them blue.
No, I think he's talking about Last Airbender.
no, Lug knows. No, I thought you
were
realized
talking about the other Avatar.
Oh, I thought you were making a joke. I thought you knew I was talking about Last Airbender. I thought you were making a joke.
See, this is the problem. This is what they had to deal with. And now Avatar is being more like Avatar by bringing in elemental stuff. We just went through a water tribe, and next up is a fire tribe, and I guess the
There
first
you
was
go.
retroactively about an air tribe.
So,
They
I
all
gotta
turned.
go. I gotta.
Yeah, me too.
I'm doing an Xbox live stream at or kind of thing at 3, and I got a few things I got to do before then. So, I'm gonna take off. Lug, awesome stream. Feel free to invite me on anytime. So, and Daniel, really good to meet you.
Likewise.
Yeah, he's
Alright,
got some
man.
great he's got some comics. All things like 2100 Samurai and Screecher are up out there. Definitely should be seeing these. You also got some other shows like this Blue Avatar rewatch, right? And
Yep, I'm doing proper
Screen
Avatar
Brothers.
rewatch.
Qualified blue Avatar.
Those go live every Monday at 1, and actually, about an hour ago, I had the latest episode of my Super Split Screen Brothers, my video game podcast, go live. So,
Nice.
yeah, check that out. Make sure to check it out, like, comment, subscribe on it. I need to feed that algorithm. So, Lug, please do your duty. I did something for you, now do something for me.
Quid pro quo.
But anyway, yeah, we'll be doing the Xbox stuff. Slug, feel free to stop by for that one. I'll talk to you guys later.
See ya. Good luck, man.
all right, great to have you here then.
Yeah. Just don't usually do a lot of live streams and things like that. Most of the time I'm on client calls during the week, but this was an extended lunch break for me where I noshed on beef jerky and talked about cool nerd culture.
Bit new here myself.
I I guess Royce and Richard would be yelling at me to shill at this point. So for those of you watching, you can find me on Twitter at Mr. DP Riley. You can find my books on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble. They're worldwide at this point. Jisedai, Samurai, Sci-Fi Epic, and Legacy of Heroes superheroes. Normal, I tried to go back to the kind of golden age superhero style with Legacy of Heroes in the modern world. It's been a lot of fun to write. And I have a literary services website, whimsyland.org. It's my business. Helping people write books. That's my horrible shill.
We're all unscripted here.
Yeah. No, I'm just terrible at it. I could shill for anybody else. I could do a 5 to 10 minute slot for your program. I could do it for anybody after talking to him for an hour, but I cannot shill for myself. Put a gun to my head, I'll take the bullet instead. I'm just bad at it.
Oh no.
Well, it was awesome getting to talk to you. Hopefully I'll find an opportunity to join in on one of these again, or
Yeah, you can pick your
maybe with some upcoming free time, I'll get involved with some other shows and babble about stuff with more people.
Yeah, you can pick up others, but you can't just defy gravity and pick yourself up.
Yeah, for sure. It's true. Oh, great to meet you. Great to be on here. I will talk to you later.
All right. Thanks for coming by.
See ya.
And I guess that just leaves me. Guess I better get back to Earth. I have some more indie comic reviews I gotta make. See y'all.